Suddenly, she hid herself properly behind the tree. Some persons were running in different directions with a hockey stick or a wooden log. She couldn't pinpoint it because the visions were partially blocked by the leaves. The leaves in this particular area were dense enough to hide two people. They were saved, she thought. She slightly tilted her head towards the left. The man, whom she had acquainted with, was gesturing to her as if not to make any noise. She nodded in response, and the man smiled. For a moment, she felt at peace, suddenly forgetting that they were hiding from some form of antisocial elements. She felt uneasy near her ears. To her surprise, it was a worm, possibly looking at her with anger, because she dared to stand in its usual way, she thought. Her normal reflex on seeing a worm or an insect was to scream as if a snake had entered. If a snake had entered, she could not imagine it, as she knew that the effect would efficiently bring the attention of some 100 people to the spot. When her brain finally gave the instruction to scream, she opened her mouth to do so. The man near her touched her shoulder and reminded her to be calm. He also gestured that he would take care of the worm passenger in the tree highways. She thought, is this man a magician or a mind reader? How could he read all my thoughts even before I act on them? But then she sighed and looked again at the other side of the tree. Now she couldn't see anyone there. So she signaled to the man as if none were there, and it was now safe for them to leave the park as soon as possible. Both carefully stepped out from the shadow of the tree. The soft breeze touched her face, and she smiled. For a split second, she forgot that she had a person beside her. Suddenly, a chuckle brought her back to the scene. She gave him an embarrassed smile, but he said, "It's cute for you to enjoy nature at its best." She nodded, and he suddenly sat on the nearby park bench. She followed him and took a seat opposite to him on another park bench. She felt tired after the unknown persons were running after her. She saw the man now pouring water from his water bottle over his face. She smiled at his actions and closed her eyes for a while. She just remembered how she was chased by those unknown persons and was pulled between the run to the side of the tree by this kind stranger. She simply thought all that was a dream, but her mind gave her all valid reasons to believe it was not a dream but reality. She shook her head in disbelief. Suddenly, he told her, "It's all right, but I feel it's all like a dream." And he chuckled. She was shocked. Again, this man was reading her thoughts exactly. But she felt she should not be expressing this. She just nodded in response. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "I'm Aditya." Looking at her with a questioning look, obviously expecting her to tell her name. Instead, she said, "Nice name." He nodded as if understanding her and smiled. He asked her, "Who were all those? And why they are after you? Are they coming to kidnap you?" And chuckled once again. She could not suppress her smile and shook her head as if telling him no. He said, "Well, it was God who made me appear there to search for my tennis ball. If not, I could not be here helping you." She listened to his words carefully and said, "Anyways, thank you, friend." Aditya thought, "Friend? Then why are you avoiding my question? Why can't a friend know your name?" He smiled but did not say anything. He told her that he would send her home, but she denied and said, "I'm not a resident here. I came with my family." Aditya narrowed his eyebrows in an exciting manner and said, "Of course, I felt that you are not from my state." He asked her, "Where are you from?" But she just smiled. Aditya thought, "Yeah, we are friends, so you won't say," and sighed. He asked, "Can I ask where your family members are? Why do you run alone here? Why not have your family accompany you?" She stopped and sighed, saying, "Side effects of having some cousins with adventurous minds," and smiled. Aditya, with a puzzled look, asked her to explain. She continued, "It was one of my cousin's great ideas to hide some puzzles about the locations that we want to visit. As she did not believe in the usual way of touring with a guide taking us to places and explaining things, she felt adventure looks great." and she sighed. Aditya smiled and said,
It's good to be adventurous, but safety comes first.
She smiled and said, Yeah, but not to worry. My family members are more clever than her. They already asked others to just act as if searching for the clue and after a while reached the temple nearby. I was doing the same, but was a little distracted by nature and the fairies here. Aditya gave a puzzled look and thought.
Faris? Is she a sorceress or something?
Suddenly she smiled and said, I'm not the black magician or the sorceress, and smiling widely. Aditya was shocked for a second, as if doubting her identity. He could not literally understand how she even read his mind exactly, and by thinking so, he got distracted in his world of thoughts. Suddenly, he was brought back to his senses by her words. I told fairies in a figurative sense. I mean, these trees, birds, squirrels, etc., etc. And she smiled. Aditya could not stop himself from imitating her. He also joined her in her smile, and she somehow managed to stop from laughing more. Aditya asked her
Then where do these kidnappers fit into your wonderful nature's fairy tale?
and chuckled. She just couldn't answer that question before her smile got the best of her once again. She gestured to him, indicating no, as if asking him not to make her smile like this. Understanding this clearly, Aditya, in between his laughter, said,
Okay.
and gestured for her to continue. She adjusted her posture and, seeing him, began her story. I was standing there, and a small squirrel started to run. I felt like following it, so I walked towards it. Suddenly, I heard someone calling, Hey, wine red colored dress? And I just stopped and looked at my dress. I am wearing it. So I just turned back to see who was it calling me, or perhaps someone else who is wearing the same color? But to my surprise, when I looked at that person or that gang, they were coming as if to beat me or something. So I started to run. They began yelling at me, asking me to stop. I ran through the park for some minutes, but I couldn't find the exit in a hurry. That's why I started to search for a place to hide. As if catching my thoughts, you just pulled me to the side of the trees and really saved me. She folded her hands as if expressing her heartfelt thanks to him, and Aditya felt goosebumps over his skin, as if he had truly saved the woman from danger, whatever it was, and he smiled. She nodded and then started to search for the exit point. Aditya said,
It's in the other corner. I will take you there.
She simply said, No, why do you suffer? I think I can manage, and asked him to carry on. But deep inside, she felt an urge to stop being so humble for some unknown reason. She couldn't really say why she felt so. Still, she couldn't undo what she said earlier. But she felt that he would say he had the time and would take her there. She felt the need to extend this acquaintance to at least some more time. Suddenly, she heard his words.
I already got my tennis ball and now I'm all free. I can be a good guide for you to show this place around until your temple destination.
And he smiled at her. She felt like running and jumping in joy, but she just smiled and gestured for him to lead the way. Aditya smiled and both started to walk. Finally, they exited the park and she looked to the other side. Aditya showed her the way towards her temple destination and she followed him. On the way, they both saw a thin and tired dog. She looked around to see any small grocery shops nearby and suddenly she noticed Aditya was missing. She felt he had gone somewhere. And when his voice reached her once again, she turned to look at him. On seeing him, she felt really happy and asked, Where did you go? Aditya smiled and said,
I went to get this biscuit packet.
She smiled, and just as she was about to ask him if he would give two biscuits to the dog, he actually did that. He emptied the entire packet to the dog. And now, after eating the biscuits, the dog seemed to be a little happy and energetic, running in joy. Both smiled at the little dog, and in between, she looked at Aditya, the man who really reads her thoughts as if from an open book. Suddenly, Aditya asked her
You were thinking of doing the same, right?
and looked at her. She just said, I love dogs. and avoided answering the question. But he said,
We think alike in some places, right?
and looked at her. She smiled and thought, not in some places. To be precise, you read me completely. How should I punish you for this robbery? Suddenly, Aditya said,
Don't punish me for this.
and chuckled. She couldn't believe her ears. She just shook her head in disbelief. Aditya cleared his throat and asked.
Okay, tell me about your family.
She nodded and said, my family consists of a mother, father, and a precious daughter. Hope you know her now, and smiled. Aditya couldn't help but smile. She continued, it is now a family vacation, meaning my maternal grandmother and my two maternal aunts and their families, including my four cousins. Aditya looked at her with a questioning expression. She gestured for him to stop and said, my grandfather passed away a year ago. Aditya said,
I'm sorry.
she said, it's all right. We all learn to be strong. And then asked, how many members are in your family? Aditya said,
I have a mother and a sister.
suddenly, some voices hit their ears. Both turned to their back and saw those same men coming, to be precise, running towards them. Suddenly, she felt that the towering height of a man could save her from this problem. So she took a step back and stood behind him. Aditya then turned to his side, saw nothing but air, but soon realized that she was standing behind him. Aditya asked,
Where do you hide?
she said, without learning karate, I won't get into a fight with them. Aditya couldn't stop himself from smiling at her words, but he couldn't enjoy her sense of humor as the five men reached them. He folded his fist and punched the first two men right in their eyes. The sound of this action shocked her. She felt an urge to see what's happening. When she moved to his side, she saw two men already on the road, their eyes swollen to the level where they could barely see their own hands. When she turned to see Aditya, he was standing as if going to do the same action on the other three. Suddenly, a man from them caught his legs. Aditya yanked and jumped over his head, kicking him from behind, and that man kissed the road in the blink of a second. One man came running to hit him with a hockey stick, but he defended himself and repeated the same action, punching the man's eyes. The man rolled in pain, and suddenly the other man screamed,
She's not the one we are looking for.
on hearing this, the other four looked at this person and started to scatter in their own positions after their unwanted fight. All started to run, and Aditya smiled and jumped in happiness. She said, you are awesome! This is my first time watching a fight live. Aditya smiled and asked.
Really?
She nodded and asked, are you okay? Aditya smiled, stretched his hands, and said,
I'm experienced in fights from school.
she gave him a puzzled look. He smiled and said,
I mean genuine fights where wrongdoers are well treated with fist.
and smiled widely. She imitated the same with hearty laughter and asked, why do you take an inclination to attack the eyes? Eyes are a very sensitive region, and what if their eyes got severely damaged? Why not beat their legs or hands? On hearing this, Aditya smiled and said,
You're right, but I don't like to drag the fight for so long. As you say, if I beat them in hands or legs, they may overpower me and then I will have to exert more power. So I attack the eyes and they stop within minutes. But yes, I will take care next time.
She smiled and once again thanked him. Aditya said,
If you are moved by my kindness towards you, then may I know your name?
her face lit up with surprise. But then she smiled and said, you are intelligent. Aditya frowned and said,
No, I think I need to improve. Still, I cannot get your name from you, so how intelligent am I?
and showed a sad expression on his face. She smiled and said, Diya. Aditya smiled and said,
Oh, good name. Just four letters, not very difficult to remember. Then why didn't you say that first?
she smiled and said, it is me. I'm a little mysterious. But for your kind information, a name may be just a few letters. But to define me, you will need millions of combinations of all those 26 alphabets in English. Aditya smiled and nodded as if agreeing. Finally, Aditya sighed and called
Diya,
and said
let's have coffee. I need to recharge a bit.
he just went without hearing her out and came back with two coffees folded with tissues. He handed one to her and started to sip his. She smiled and sipped hers. Then she saw a pen trying to fall from his pocket. She caught it and kind of spilled coffee on her dress. Aditya smiled and said,
Social service sometimes gives us some memory stains like this.
and chuckled. She just smiled and turned to see any signs of pipe water. Aditya asked her to follow him. Both entered the bakery where he brought the coffee and took her to the restroom. She cleaned her dress and he waited outside by having a small chat with the supplier boy. She finished scribbling something on the tissue paper, folded it, and came out, handing over the pen to him. Aditya smiled and said,
Thank you.
She said, My pleasure. Suddenly he said,
Your temple destination is near now. Just to the left of this road, you can see the temple.
She completely forgot that he was taking her to her family. She just smiled at her own emotions, realizing that the man she met a few hours ago took her out of her world. She felt a sadness filling her heart. She couldn't pinpoint the reason. She felt as if talking with someone she had known for years, but life could endorse that they had just met. She couldn't stop feeling this familiarity and comfortableness with him. She finally said, Aditya, thank you for losing your tennis ball in the park. And if you see those men once again who came after me, thank them on behalf of me. Aditya gave her a confused look, but she continued, If not, we would not have met, and smiled. Aditya said,
That's right.
and asked her.
Have we ever met before? I feel a familiarity with you. I cannot completely understand myself.
She nodded with a smile and thought, Why am I not surprised? Aditya clapped his hands as if pulling her out of her own thoughts. She smiled and said, I'm thinking the same. She just said, Thank you for everything, and then heard a male voice calling her. She turned and ran towards him. Aditya felt like stopping her, thinking,
I've not really said bye to her.
but he stood frozen. She talked with that man in his 40s and he's taller. Suddenly, he saw she is running back towards him. Aditya couldn't stop smiling at her. She came in front of him and between her panting, she said, It is my uncle and they are waiting for me. Aditya nodded as if allowing her to continue. She took a deep breath and said, Thank you for your service, Mr. Guide? Gesturing her hands as if giving a friendly handshake. Aditya smiled and touched her hands, but he got a paper or something folded. She took her hands back and said, Bye, meet you soon. Aditya couldn't understand her words, especially the phrase, meet you soon. He mumbled.
How is that possible?
Suddenly, his phone rang, his mom on the call. He attended the call, and suddenly someone interrupted their call. He heard the voice of his house help, and he waited patiently. But his thoughts were now with Diya and her puzzling words. He unfolded the tissue and read, Hello, Aditya. I have something to tell you. Just visualize me telling you all this in a cheerful voice. Aditya smiled, and the message continued. You are the sweet stranger that I met today. I know we both met like it is predestined. I feel happy about it. I hope you think I like here too. Don't be puzzled. You were entirely reading me several times as if an open book. It is a first experience for me. So, I think this encounter is just a start. I am very mysterious. You would have known that from me right now. So, I am leaving you here temporarily as a mysterious stranger. Aditya stopped reading and thought.
You are not mysterious completely. I know your name at least.
He continued reading the message. So you think you know my name at least, but that's not my name. Sorry, but I feel this friendship continues. So to know me more, connect with me. Aditya felt a little loss and he mumbled.
Oh, this is your email ID, Miss Mysterious.
And the message continued. Hope to see your message soon. I feel you are an adventurous loving person. Then you can try this friendship with me. What if I can take you to the angle where you can witness the magic of life? Aditya smiled As if someone put a spell breaker on him, he ran towards the corner and saw the tourist bus, which had just started to move. He ran after it. Suddenly, he saw hands waving goodbye at him from the back window. He smiled and shouted,
I won't spare you, miss. I'm coming to your life. Let me see what your magic is all about.
and laughed. Upon once again seeing the message on the tissue paper, suddenly he noticed another line in the corner of the tissue. The message was written in small letters as if it could only be noticed by chance or could be entirely ignored. He remembered her idea to visualize her telling the message. So he did it and said,
The messages?
You're welcome, stranger. I know you would agree to this friendship. We are somehow reading each other's thoughts. So, to know the magic behind all this, come and find me through your message. And one more thing, I could not find a situation to tell you this. Your chuckling is so cute. Bye, take care. Meet you soon. Aditya smiled and he couldn't stop smiling for some reason. He also felt a mixture of emotions and he couldn't explain why he felt that way. Suddenly, he saw his mobile and remembered his mother's call and his impulsiveness in not disconnecting it. He just said,
Hello, Mom, you there?
Suddenly, his mother said, Come home soon. We have to depart for your cousin's engagement today. Come soon. He asked.
Have you heard anything, Mom?
His mother answered. The line was disturbing. I could not hear anything. Only now I got to hear your voice clearly. Come home soon. He sighed and said,
I'm I'm on the way, Mom.
Aditya smiled and ran back to the park where he parked his scooty. His heart and soul thrilled with a newfound mystery and the mysterious her. Aditya mumbled,
Life indeed is magic.
In the bus, cousins are really having a great time. And all are saying,
Some adventures are more wonderful.
she is feeling excited and her cousin noticed that and asked, Did you enjoy my adventure idea? She just hugged her cousin and said, Yeah, some adventures are most wonderful and as well make our life more magical. Her cousin gave her a confused smile. She noticed it but behaved as if not understanding the confusion. She is super excited on the whole. The end. So, friends, I really hope you enjoyed the story. What if you meet someone so mysterious yet magical in your life too? Won't life be so interesting after that? Just think about it. By telling me all this, your own friend is vanishing with a very last question to you guys. Friends,